Good morning, Santa Clarita. Welcome in. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. I am Matt Watson, and this is SCVi and iLead Schools' Eye on the Valley. Our show, Eye on the Valley, is brought to you by SCVi and iLead Charter Schools. We're a network of free public charter schools with campuses in Castaic, Agua Dulce, Lancaster. We've got a fully accredited online school, a burgeoning homeschool program called iLead Exploration. You know what? Just visit our website at ileadschools.org for more information on any of our schools, classroom-based, virtual, hybrid, anything that you need for your free public education needs. Again, ileadschools.org. So yeah, we keep our eye on education here in Santa Clarita and across the nation. But like the show says, we also like to keep our eye on the valley as well, bringing you everything that you need to know about what's what here in the valley. And we do so while trying to put a little smile on your face, slide into the weekend with a giggle, a chuckle, and maybe some informative and inspirational information. So here we go. We are back, finally. Yeah, it's been a little while since we were live. I takes a lot of vacation because I gets a lot of vacation. So we did enjoy the holiday break and then got the schools back into the swing of things, and we are back. While we were away, I hope you enjoyed some of the reruns, the replays of shows from back in November and December. You know, we have some great shows, and they were just as good the second time around, but I get it, and for you and for me and for everybody, there's nothing like a good live show. So here we are, and what a show we have for you today. What a great way to start 2024. This is the way to come back. While I was out living my best life, traveling and skiing and being on vacation, producer Sarah, boy, she was in the lab. She was just stacking guests for us for the next couple of months. Check this out. Over the next few weeks alone, we've got Mayor Cameron Smythe coming in. We've got Jeff Barber from the Maine, the theater. You remember Jeff? He's the guy with the coolest nickname. His name is Six. There's a really cool story about it, but we won't share it. You'll have to wait and check out Jeff when he's on the air. We've got Lisa Latimer. She's the director of iLead Agua Dulce. She'll be coming in, I believe, next week. We'll touch base with one of our community's quietly most inspiring organizations when Carolyn Olson from FYI Fostering Youth Independence stops by. They're doing great things. We've got local and national elections heating up here in 2024, so we'll be checking in with some of our locally electeds and their competition as well. So yeah, we've got some great shows coming up for you, and today is nothing to sneeze at either. We've just got an amazing show that I haven't even mentioned. Today's show, we've got Melissa Rose from SCVi Charter School and a couple of her students here in studio with us. They actually recently sent a science experiment to the International Space Station. Yep, I said it. They sent a science experiment to the International Space Station. It came back for post-flight analysis. We'll get into all that. So these sixth graders proposed, wrote, and sent their own experiment to be conducted in space, and you're not going to believe this. We'll be speaking with them in, like I said, just a moment. And then in hour number 2, we're going to check in with our show's BFF, Brian Koegle. Brian is an employment law expert who just yesterday conducted a seminar for members of the greater Santa Clarita business community through the Chamber of Commerce on new employment laws for 2024. So if you're an employer and you missed it, you won't want to miss Brian. He'll be in hour number 2, updating us live and in person. He'll have everything that employers need to know for the year, and as well as some things that employees need to be aware of as well. So I checked in with Big T. Big T has been just chomping at the bit for some airtime. He has really missed the show during our time off, and he couldn't be more excited that he'll get to play with his friend Brian as well. So, we've got it all this morning, inspiration, education, and a little bit of horsing around at the end of the show. So let's go ahead and do this. As I said, my first guests this morning are Kara Chan and Rayleigh Newton. Rayleigh goes by Ray, and they are both sixth graders from SCVi, your local free public charter school. They recently participated in iLead's Dream Up to Space program, in which they designed a unique experiment that was selected to be launched to the International Space Station. I mean, how cool is that? Your schoolwork gets chosen to be sent into space. Anyways, so their experiment was conducted by astronauts on the International Space Station simultaneously while they conducted an identical experiment here on Earth. The space-based experiment was recently returned to them for post-flight analysis, I understand. And also joining us is their teacher, Melissa Rose, as I mentioned. Melissa has been guiding them through this process since last year when they were in 5th grade. Melissa, Kara, Ray, welcome to Eye on the Valley. Good to have you. So, Kara and Ray, let's start with you. So, I mentioned you're both in 6th grade. How long have each of you been with SCVi?
Well, I've been in since 4th grade.
Okay.
This is my 4th year at SCVi.
Okay, so since probably what, 3rd grade, 2nd grade? Okay, cool. So 3rd grade, 4th grade, you started with us. You've been with us for 3-4 years now. So and you came, I guess, from the local district schools. What do you find different about SCVi? How is SCVi different from your previous schools?
Definitely projects like Washington, D.C. trip, Dream Up, and a fighter jet, and the teaching way. There's a different way of teaching, and I really do like the school.
Okay, Kara, what about you?
SCVi offers rare opportunities like Dream Up to Space, the Glider Project, and Dual Immersion. Dream Up to Space teaches learners what impact microgravity has on matter and about the International Space Station. 8th graders are given opportunity to learn about gliders from glider pilots, design and launch their own gliders, and fly a real glider. Spanish is being offered for learners from K to 12, not 12, K to 5th.
Okay, all right. I need you to slow down here. I need to keep my job. You guys are killing it. I appreciate it. Melissa, let's talk to you. Basically, the same question. How long have you been with SCVi? You are a teacher. We call our teachers facilitators. Not, and I actually had someone wag their finger at me once and say, "Matt, you don't call them teachers because they don't have a teaching credential. They're not qualified to be teachers." Not true. All of our teachers are highly qualified by the same state standards that any other public school is. We call you a facilitator because we do things a little bit differently, as Kara was saying. Melissa, how long have you been with SCVi as a facilitator, and how did you find us?
I've been with SCVi as a facilitator since 2020, I believe. Yes,
Okay.
It was August 2020.
Okay, so you decided to join us when things were really hard.
Yeah, it was great. No, but I absolutely learned a lot from teaching there. And I actually was first found SCVi because I was doing my credential program and my master's program at the University of Laverne. And that was my student teaching placement. And they even wrote in the email to me, we have an exciting opportunity for you. So I was already going in after having some experience in some of the local public school districts with long-term and short-term substitute jobs, seeing a whole different model of education.
Okay, so you also have that comparative experience working with the local districts. How do you find it different coming from the teacher perspective?
I find it different a lot in some things that Kara and Ray have already touched upon with the project-based learning. And just the definition of using the word facilitator and learner instead of student and teacher. It really implies more of a two-way learning relationship where we're not just necessarily lecturing at students all day. Of course, no good teacher should be doing that anywhere.
Sure.
But we're almost like coaches for these learners. We try to individualize as much as we possibly can and build projects and build experiences for them based on our knowledge of our learners. And we guide them through these projects, but we really want the learning to be things that they discover for themselves. We want to create these experiences where they can encounter authentic learning, and it sticks with them better for a more constructivist approach.
What a great way to frame things. Rather than the teacher pouring into the student, it's more of an educational partnership. And you talk about gosh, authentic ways to kind of discover their own learning. This Dream Up to Space project is just, for me, the epitome of project-based learning. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But ladies, I kind of glossed over it a little bit in the introduction, but why don't you explain, because y'all have been neck deep in it for over a year now. Explain to our listeners what the Dream Up to Space project is. What's the idea behind the project? And then what were the different steps along the way? Tell us about the Dream Up project.
The Dream Up to Space project is a project that fifth grade learners get to write a proposal with their idea. Then Miss Rose and Mr. Call, our fifth grade facilitators, choose the finalists.
Okay.
Then we do a lot more hard work to be sent to the assessors for their choice, and then we are chosen as the winners. That was not the end. We had to.
It was just the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had to put up sign-ups for the fifth graders on our doors, and then we had to interview them. Then we were doing experiments in Ziploc bags, containers, dummy mix sticks. And then after that, we got to put our bok choy seeds into the actual mix stick to be sent up to space.
Okay.
And then after that, long break until we went to Florida, went to Kennedy Space Center, and saw a lot of really cool things, like a replica of the Mars helicopter that me, my brother, and my sister flew at my dad's event. Not my dad's event, my dad's friend's event.
Okay.
And then we also saw the launch, which was really cool because at the beginning it was really, really bright. So it looked like the sun was rising, and there was a very pretty reflection on the water. There was, when it went up higher, the boosters came off. And it kept going up and then made a ring shape, and then it looked like it was going down. But it wasn't actually going down.
Oh, okay.
And then later when we saw the boosters again, the boosters looked like shooting stars.
Wow.
So it was very bright.
Okay.
And then when it hit the water, it made a giant boom. And then Mr. Call, another teammate, and some other people were there. And later the other people there found out that our project and mine and my brother's artwork was also on the rocket.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So that's a whole lot to unpack there. So let me back up just a little bit. So you actually, both of you proposed this project, and you had it selected, you had it chosen. I love that that's, once you kind of win or get chosen, that's when the hard work really began, not ended. And you actually launched the experiment that you all designed on SpaceX up to the International Space Station. We'll talk about what happened later in just a second. But Kara, you mentioned a lot of stuff. And so Ray, I'm going to ask you to maybe go a little bit deeper into detail. So you two were what you call the PIs, the principal investigators, right? Ray, can you tell us what that means? What is a project or a principal investigator?
It means that we've been there since the beginning. We're the ones who started. We're the ones who got together the whole team. And long before this project was even a thing, I started researching. And we both decided that bok choy was the best thing to go send to space. We did a lot of research, and we're the ones who started this thing.
Okay, so you chose bok choy. Kara, why don't you tell me about that? What is bok choy? I mean, before I heard about your experiment, I think I probably could have explained a little bit what bok choy is. Explain what it is, and then what you decided to do with bok choy. Did you just take this vegetable and shoot it up into space? There was an experiment going on here.
Bok choy is this green plant that that you can eat every single part of it.
Okay.
It has multiple benefits.
All right.
And we didn't just decide to launch it up to space for no reason.
Okay.
We did
Just send the astronauts some veggies, yeah.
we did a lot of research, and we found out that it could help with space radiation.
Okay.
Because it helps with something that happens with the sun.
Okay, so it has a lot of benefits. And so what were you trying to see?
Well, yeah, as I said, long before it was in progress, I started researching.
Okay.
And it has a lot of vitamins. It is a really good vegetable. It has vitamin C, E, B, K. It's a really good vegetable. It germinates really fast. It's easy to grow in a lot of weather. And we thought that it would be good because vitamin C is known for keeping away skin cancer. And we thought it could be connected to space radiation. That's why we sent it.
So there's a lot of benefits of being able to eat bok choy in space. So what was the essence of your experiment? What were you trying to figure out regarding bok choy?
We were trying to figure out if it could grow in a mixed stick, which is a tube the size of a Sharpie. It holded 3 compartments for our experiment. Formalin, it's a type of liquid that can freeze over a experiment. Seeds, we put 20 seeds, I believe.
Yes,
and
20 seeds.
We put water.
4 milliliters of water, 1 milliliter of formalin.
Okay. All right. And so the idea was you sent these seeds up. You wanted to see if we could grow bok choy in space to see if that's something that could help us as humans start to look toward the moon and Mars and potentially living there one day, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you put these seeds and water in this small, I call it a test tube, but the project generator, Miss Fredette, keeps telling me, Matt, no, this is much smaller than a test tube. There are lots of constraints. You put seeds and water in there, and so you had the astronauts then mix the seeds and water in space to see if we could grow bok choy, and then later on you had them mix in the formalin. Can you explain why you had them mix in the formalin in space? Because doesn't that kill any growth that's going on?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't.
What the formalin is it's not cold. It's a thing that forms it in place. So we can see what happened because when it comes down, there's a angle where it comes down, and so we could see some stuff that could be from Earth that we thought was from space, and so it would be hard to test and do post-flight analysis.
Okay, fantastic. So you sent this project up, and I want to talk about what happened because recently you got your results back, and so I want to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break. Melissa, I also want to talk to you about what your experience guiding these young scientists through this project was like. But we're going to take a quick break. Melissa Rose, facilitator with SCVi, your local TK through 12th grade free public charter school, joins us this morning along with her learners, Kara Chan and Ray Newton. We're talking about the science experiment that they recently sent into space and the post-flight analysis that they've been working on. We'll talk more about that when we come back. I'm Matt Watson, and you're listening to SCVi and iLead Schools' Eye on the Valley on your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. This is Matt Watson, and you are listening to SCVi and iLead Schools' Eye on the Valley. I'm joined this morning by fifth grade teacher Melissa Rose and her, well, now former students, Kara Chan and Ray Newton. They are now in sixth grade at SCVi, but have been working with Melissa on the Dream Up to Space project since last year. It's a project that has kind of extended into, not kind of, fully extended into their sixth grade year now. Before the break, we were talking about the Dream Up to Space project. Kara, Ray, this is just an incredible project that allowed you to write your own experiment to help determine the viability of humans colonizing the moon and Mars. You mentioned that you wanted to see, because there's so many different questions to answer before we can start living in space, right? And you wanted to see specifically, can we grow bok choy in space? Because it's got just tons of vitamins, tons of benefits, including dealing with some things, Ray, you mentioned, that we don't necessarily have to deal with so much here on Earth. The different radiation that humans are going to be exposed to in space, you think bok choy will be beneficial with that. So you're trying to see if we could grow that in space. What an absolutely amazing opportunity for you. But I want to talk to your teacher for just a second, because Melissa, this is kind of cool for you. You know, I've been a teacher for coming up on 30 years now. Gulp.
Well, it's like my whole life.
But I never had the opportunity to guide my students through a project like this. Tell us about it from your perspective. I understand you started working with Ray and Kara last year, and even though they're no longer in your class, you're still providing guidance for them, right? So what types of things did you learn as an educator, and what did you see your kids learning and starting to do as a result of the Dream Up to Space project?
Well, the way that we did this project was we started it when they were fifth graders. So this was actually would have been in the fall of 2022. So long time ago.
Yeah.
We taught the entire fifth grade at SCVi about the International Space Station, about microgravity, and about the design and experimental process. And then every fifth grader wrote a proposal to potentially, for an experiment that could potentially be selected to be performed on the International Space Station. So it's very interesting to see the sort of different approaches different types of students took towards this project. Kara and Ray, I noticed especially, were very research heavy in their approach. They went above and beyond with the amount of research, which is one of the things that made their proposals stand out so much. And I was actually impressed with all of my learners. Everybody who participated ended up having a pretty solid proposal. So I was very proud of how we set high expectations for this project and how all of our learners, regardless of, maybe what their starting point was, they all rose to that expectation. So as a fairly new teacher myself, it was definitely one of my defining moments so far. I felt like a proud mother hen.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. It blows my mind when I see what our kids who participate in this project are able to do. Ladies, this project was actually designed originally for college and high school students years ago. And we realized, you know what? I bet kids in middle school could probably rise to the level, like you said, Melissa. And then we started moving it down toward the elementary grades. So we've had students in the past as young as third grade participate in this project. And obviously through, we've had our high schoolers participate in the project. And as long as they have the guidance of experts like you, Melissa, they do rise to the level of expectation. So let's talk about the process a little bit, because it wasn't easy, was it? You had to write proposals. You had to go before a panel and present a lot of this real world stuff that you're going to have to do regardless of whatever career you decide to go into. So once your project was selected to fly, right? So you put together a proposal, you're sort of kind of competing alongside of your classmates. Your project gets selected to fly again to the International Space Station. So funny. I remember the day when you were doing your post-flight analysis, and I was texting with a friend of mine, and she was like, "Hey, let's go do something." I said, "I can't. I'm taking pictures of these people, these kids that are." And she says, "Wait, no, they seriously sent their schoolwork into outer space?" I said, "Yes," and it came back. And look, and I sent her a picture of it. It still blows my mind every time I talk about it. But I think Kara, you talked about expanding your team. Once your project was chosen, you expanded your team. You had to interview other fifth graders. Tell me about that process. Why did you have to add people to your team, and how did you choose who was going to be then folded into your team?
We didn't just grab people randomly. We put up a sign-up sign to see who would want to actually do it. Not like just this person come over here, this person come over here,
Okay.
and then they don't even want to do it.
Sure. You want people that want to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also had to interview and do other stuff like that because it's not just a two people thing. We have to have a lot of other people too.
Okay.
It's really a long time commitment, and we had to make sure that our teammates would be ready for the long haul. And I'm really glad, and I'm really happy with what we chose. Our teammates would go above and beyond, and we had a whole process. It took about, how long did it take? At least like a month maybe, like where we
Probably
actually
around that
started.
Okay.
And we put sign up sheets, we did interviews, we did tests, we had them look at our, we had applications. They had to do research, and they had to be ready for us, for them to start doing something that's going to be a commitment but very rewarding.
Melissa, this really illustrates what you were talking about, right? They're learning, we talk about the need for schools to teach real world skills. They're learning to lead not by studying leadership, but by leading, right? They're choosing folks for their team. They're collaborating. They're looking at different, they're sort of evaluating their peers on their soft skills and ability to get the work done. This is really amazing. So, Ray, I heard that you also you had some other support besides Miss Rose. You were working with an advisor, some sort of expert along the way. Who was that? Who was helping guide you with your experiment?
Mr. Call, our other PF, principal facilitator,
Okay.
got them, and I remember him talking about it. Do you remember the name, Kara?
I remember that we had two other advisors.
Uh-huh.
Director of STEM Initiative, Miss Fredette, and our STEM project specialist, Miss Melville.
Okay, so you had so these are folks that I've worked with in the past. Kathleen Fredette and Shauna Melville. There's some STEM experts. There's some amazing scientists. So they helped you through the project and kind of determine what to do and what would be best, because the worst thing in the world is to send something into outer space, once in a lifetime experience, and not have things work out right. So they kind of helped guide you through the project?
Yes, they did.
Fantastic. So when did it launch? When did it finally, because again, you launched your experiment that you designed up to space. When did it launch?
November 9th. It launched on November 9th in 2023, and it came back on, I believe December, I thought it was 29th.
Well,
it was
we
a
did
week.
a post-analysis, so...
Yeah, it came back the day before. It came back December 29th, and I remember because I got the call. It was a Friday. I'm sitting here on vacation, right, just kind of loafing around, and they called me and said, Matt, the experiments are back. Even though it's a Saturday, even though it's late December, middle of vacation, the kids are doing post-flight analysis. Bring your camera, get in here. So, gosh, you're talking a full year after they even started, Melissa.
More than a year.
Yeah, more than a year after they started, this project gets launched. You talk about sustainability, and it's funny. We say this microwave society, kids can't keep their mind on one thing for very long. No, it's been almost a year and a half. Y'all have been working on this. So did you, Kara, you said you went to Kennedy Space Center. You went to Cape Canaveral for the launch. Ray, did you get to go as well?
Yeah, we got to go to Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Uh-huh.
To do a couple of events. First of all, the first day we went to Kennedy Space Center, where we got to do awards and we got certificates, and it was really, that's when it was really rewarding, and especially when we got to appreciate all the time, all the mishaps, all the different dates where we really got to see this. And then the second day we had a dinner, and then the third day, Kara got to see the launch where it went.
My family, Wyatt's family, and Mr. Call, and some other people.
Yeah, you mentioned mishaps. That happens in space exploration all the time, right? I remember years ago when we first did this project, I got to go out for the launch and our kids' very first experiment. They were experimenting with rust to see if metal would rust in space, and their experiment was on the rocket, and we were in the stands, and the smoke starts coming out, and then way off in the horizon, lightning. And I had to go home. And they canceled they postponed. They call it slipped, right? The rocket couldn't launch that day. It had to slip. They said, but don't worry about it. We're going to launch tomorrow. And I was like, oh, I can't. I got to go back tonight. And, when you're working with companies like SpaceX and NanoRacks and things like that, they were like, all right, man, you do you. Now, fortunately, the students were able to stay and see it launch. But I know what you're talking about, Ray. That kind of stuff just happens in space exploration. So, Melissa, what about you? Did you get to go to Kennedy Space Center? Did you get to see it launch?
I got to go to Kennedy Space Center, which was an amazing experience. I had never been to Kennedy Space Center before, so got to learn about the history of space exploration, about the Artemis project, got to walk into a replica of the Orion capsule. It was amazing. And then, of course, to be there when when my learners got their awards and certificates. They received recognition from iLead, from our Congressman Mike Garcia, from LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger for our district. So they pretty high up, they got recognized. So I was very proud of them. Unfortunately, because as we talked about, a lot of the different schedule slips, by the time I had already bought my tickets to Florida and rescheduled, when the launch got rescheduled again, unfortunately, I just didn't have the budget to change that again. So I ended up missing the launch itself, but my fellow facilitator, Brent Call, luckily he was there and he had an amazing video of it.
Oh, fantastic. And it's funny, every time we have a different group of students send their experiment to the space station, we learn new things, and you hear Ms. Fredette and Ms. Melville talk about it all the time. We learned something new this time. One of the things that they learned this time is travel insurance. Buying the travel insurance, because plans always change. So now I understand. So exciting. What an amazing culmination that you get to launch your experiment into space to the International Space Station. But that wasn't the end of it, was it? You mentioned that end of December, your experiment comes back to space, and you get the phone call. Okay, they're back.
It doesn't come back to space.
I'm sorry, it came back to Earth. Came back from space. Thank you for the correction. I appreciate it. So then you had to do post-flight analysis. Tell us about that. What is the post-flight analysis, and what did you find?
The post-flight analysis is when we open up the mixtape. We had to cut it open. And look at the growth of the bok choy seeds. There was very, very little growth. There was like a crack in a few of them.
Okay.
So I wrote down like 0 growth because there was like very, very little that you could hardly see it.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, so I was definitely disappointed, but it was a really breakthrough, and at least we got some information, because that's what science is about. We learn and we do mistakes, but we get to learn, and I'm really glad that we got a chance, and now we get to find out different outcomes, different possibilities, and it was really, and also, so it also, we're not exactly sure, but we are definitely happy that we get to learn from this.
Fantastic. So what are your ultimate conclusions? Is this something that sorry world and the history of humanity, bok choy cannot be grown in space? Or is this something that, we discovered that our experiment wasn't successful, but there might be other ways to do this that other scientists can then learn from you and grow, and this might be a possibility?
Before, when we were researching, we found out that bok choy has been grown in space.
Oh, okay.
Before by Michael Hopkins.
All right.
And we thought it would grow in space, and we think that the formalin might have leaked through.
Oh.
And might have already killed it.
Okay, so you think that maybe there was a small kind of hitch in your giddy up, a little problem with the experiment that came up.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, we didn't get to use all the materials for our dummy trials, where we substituted them with Ziploc baggies and also dummy mix sticks. We
Okay.
also didn't get to use this thing we added, wax, and of course formalin, because we're in a school place, and of course it could leak through. But we do think that it might be a component of something we didn't use, because all before our trials, it definitely germinated and it was successful. So three
Okay.
things that might have happened was wax, formalin, and any possible outcome, because there's a lot of mistakes that can happen, and we learn from them.
Yeah, and that is what's ultimately so important, that that y'all are learning as students and as scientists, but that like the overall human experience, the scientific community is learning from the things that you all are doing. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of your thoughts behind this experiment. Melissa, I want to talk to you a little bit about some more stuff that kind of goes into how we do education at SCVi. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. I need a little bit more coffee while we take a break. I'm joined this morning by Kara Chan and Ray Lee Newton. They are sixth graders at SCVi Charter School, and their facilitator, their teacher, Melissa Rose. We're talking about the science experiment that they recently sent up to space, and then they did post-flight analysis. So exciting. We'll talk more with them when we get back. This is Matt Watson, and you are listening to SCVi and iLead Schools' Eye on the Valley on your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. This is Matt Watson, your host, and you are listening to SCVi and iLead Schools' Eye on the Valley. I'm talking this morning with Melissa and Kara and Ray. Kara and Ray are students with SCVi. They are currently in sixth grade, but they started on this project called Dream Up to Space when they were in fifth grade in Melissa's classroom. And, if you missed it, long story short, they wrote their own experiment, presented the experiment, got selected, then had to interview some of their classmates, chose a team to help them, get their experiment into outer space. Their experiment was launched on SpaceX from Kennedy Space Center up to the International Space Station, conducted by scientists on the space station while they conducted the experiment here on Earth. And just at the end of December, their experiment was returned to Earth, where they did post-flight analysis, and they're working on the viability of growing bok choy in space because of all of its many benefits. Yeah, they did this in fifth and sixth grade. So they're demonstrating the amazing things that our kids can do when they're challenged to really step up and become part of the international scientific community. So, Kara, Ray, what do you think about the future? Is this something that maybe has inspired you, maybe inspired some of your classmates to think about a future working in aerospace and science? Or is it like, well, that was a cool thing that I did, but I'm going to be a lawyer or a teacher or something like that? What do you think about your future?
Yes, it definitely inspired me. When I grow up, I want to be a medical research doctor. I would love to be able to send my medical research to space to find cures.
Very cool, very cool. What about you, Ray?
I definitely, before this project started, I definitely wanted to work in space. I
Okay.
just love the outcome of science, and I want to say that yes, this inspired me. This really was a great experience that I think inspired me more, and I just really want to do more about the space, working with microgravity and all sorts of things that would be great for our later future.
Fantastic. And what a great thing to be able to put on a resume, right? When you're applying for college, when you're applying for those jobs in the aerospace and science industry, to be able to say, oh, yeah, launch something into space. I've already done that, right? That's going to be a huge bolster on your resume. So, Miss Rose, Melissa, I wanted to ask you, the Dream Up to Space project well, it's kind of the ultimate in project-based learning. It truly is what I called the epitome of project-based learning. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what project-based learning is and why SCVi chooses to focus so much? Because this isn't the only similar type of project that you're working on with your kids. Most of your curriculum revolves around projects like this. Why is this so important for SCVi?
This is sort of what makes SCVi unique in terms of approaches to education. And a lot of schools do have projects involved in their curriculum, but SCVi really chooses to focus on it. And they really take an inquiry-based education approach as part of their sort of their DNA.
All right.
And what these projects do, especially with the scale that we do them at SCVi, which isn't just like we have planning guides, project planning guides, where we make sure to incorporate standards, and not just academic standards, but standards for social emotional learning too, and to help learners develop leadership skills. Like this one, Cara and Ray have clearly developed a lot of leadership skills here. And the whole focus is to basically put the learner in the driver's seat, the way that Cara and Ray, yes, me and Mr. Call and Mrs. Fredette and Mrs. Melville helped them, but it was really their choices that drove the process. So we want to, maybe not always on such a, cosmic scale, but we, even in this projects that are more localized, we want those students to be able to have those opportunities to really drive their own learning and to be able to have those authentic learning moments where they discover something by themselves. Sort of like the analogy I always use is like learning to ride a bike. You can have someone tell you to how to ride a bike until you're blue in the face, but you're never going to actually know how to do it until you get on the bike yourself. This is sort of the educational equivalent of learning to ride that bike yourself.
Yeah, so I love that analogy. Never thought of that myself, but I love it. That our students learn by doing things. We're not talking about a whole lot of theory in the classroom. It's more, we're going to throw a task at you. This is a task that's going to pique your interest. It's a real world task, and you're going to have to figure out how to do it. And the learning almost comes secondarily. It's something that comes in just kind of as a matter of necessity, which is great, right? The analogy I always used is, working on a car. You learn about mechanics because, you need that car to run. And so it's very similar. You learn about space by, sending stuff into space. You learn about science by doing real world science. Melissa, you mentioned social emotional learning as well. It's so funny when I talk to non-educators about it, oftentimes they'll think, well, yeah, it's important for kids to learn how to play nice together and to be kind, which is really important. But you talked about social emotional learning when you talked about developing leadership skills, learning to be interviewed and interview others. This is a huge part of the curriculum at SCVi as well. What does it look like?
So social emotional learning, I mean, definitely playing nice with others is definitely a part of it.
Sure.
It's just not the whole part of it. The whole part of it, what? That didn't make any sense. Oh, well, pre-coffee. There are a lot of different components that go into social emotional learning, including a big part of it is self-reflection, getting to know yourself. Because if you know yourself, then you understand how you react in situations maybe where you're put not in the best mindset, where you're put under like pressure, maybe social pressure, and it helps you interact with other people too. And so we try to help learners. We do explicit instruction in social emotional education through a variety of hands-on activities as well, where we might do some scenarios. We do some meditation and mindfulness. So we want to be able to build that self-reflection into our learners as well. That's a very important part of not just social emotional learning, but also part of it. Helps them with their academics too, and it helps them develop those leadership skills. When you know yourself, when you know how you respond to situations, when you know your best learning styles, then it helps you to guide your own academic path. And again, that's part of SCVi's ethos, is to be facilitators, to be guides and coaches, to help learners find themselves and to find their own path to success.
And it's so essential. One really does support the other, because when our learners understand how to lead and manage themselves, lead and manage others, and just understand who they are, where they come from, where they're going. It bolsters their academic ability. Because I am old school, and I've got some old school friends in the teaching profession that would say, you know what, I'm just here to teach math and reading and writing, and the rest, let's let their parents deal with. And I always ask them, so how do you manage that? How do you take someone's soul and split it in half and just work with the cognitive side and ignore the rest of the human being? And obviously very tongue-in-cheek, and they say, well, Matt, but yeah, very important that we're teaching the whole child, teaching the whole learner. We talked about kindness a little bit. Ray, I did hear that this Dream Up to Space thing isn't the only thing you've been up to. You've been working on kindness a little bit. Can you tell me about this project that I was just told about yesterday? You're working on a project called the Kindness Board. Can you just take about 30 seconds and tell us about that?
Well, I call it more of a take it or leave it. It's where I put a board and I put a lot of sticky notes with nice things to say, a lot of compliments for people who want to have a day better and they need some support. And yeah, I've been trying to get that more on places so people could see it and work with it.
In and around your school. What an amazing project to work on. This is fantastic. Melissa, Cara, Ray, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Again, congratulations. You're doing incredible things. 6th grade, you've already sent your work to space. You've got so many amazing things in your future. Keep it up. This is just one of the many examples of the mind-blowing things going on at SCVi every day. Again, we offer grades TK all the way through 12th grade, dual language immersion. We didn't even get a chance to talk about that, but we've got dual language immersion. We've got the International Baccalaureate, the IB program in our high school, aerospace and flight projects, project-based learning, leadership development, and much, much more. For more information on how you can enroll your child, no matter what grade, check us out at iLeadSantaClarita.org. That's iLeadSantaClarita.org. Stay tuned. Coming up in hour number 2, we've got Brian Koegle and your 2024 employment update. Everything that an employer or an employee needs to know for the new year coming up. And we've got some laughs with Big T coming up as well. I'm Matt Watson, and you're listening to SCVi and iLead Schools Eye in the Valley on your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. This is Matt Watson, your host, and you are listening to SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley. Such an exciting show. I mentioned it in the show intro last hour. What a great way to kick off 2024 for Eye on the Valley. Just an amazing show. We had a couple of learners from SCVi in who have launched their experiment into space. They had their experiment done by scientists on the International Space Station. They were doing post-flight analysis, and Engineer Jen and I were talking off the air about just how amazing it is, this experience that our kids get, and how capable. Jen, do you want to share what you shared with me real quick?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids, a 14-year-old boy and 11-year-old girl, 8th and 5th grade. And, they're smart kids, obviously. I'm very proud of them. But it's interesting, I've noticed in a couple of your interviews, Matt, with some of these learners, the way that they carry themselves is spectacular. That they handle themselves beautifully. On top of that, they're speaking into a microphone, which is not easy for many adults, let alone children. Sure. So I just think, and you've talked in great detail about the hands-on experience. And I think that's a massive difference between, what my kids are doing. Again, smart kids, but they're kids. Yeah. So sometimes you're having a conversation with them and their kid is showing. Whereas these learners that were in here this morning specifically, just it's a standout. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's that experiential learning that really develops that side of them. And then we're excited about our guest this hour as well. I'm joined now by our show's BFF, Brian Koegle. Brian is a partner in the Labor and Employment Practice Group at Greenspoon Martyr LLP. He provides advice and counsel, including best hiring practices, employment contracts, wage and hour issues, compensation, discipline, and termination matters to employees employers across various industries. Mr. Koegle has extensive experience representing employers on various complex matters ranging from mediation, arbitration, litigation, administrative hearings, and defending employment discrimination and fair employment practice cases. He also assists employers in designing, drafting, modifying, and implementing personnel policies, procedures, and employee handbooks, and conducts personnel policy audits. Mr. Koegle guides employers with respect to all aspects of wage and hour compliance, including overtime calculations, meal and rest period requirements, well, just all the stuff that employers need to keep in mind at all times. Mr. Koegle counsels business owners on business and commercial disputes, including protection of trade secrets and proprietary information. He's just your go-to employment attorney. Before joining Green Spoon Martyr, Mr. Koegle was a partner at Pool and Shaffrey LLP, handling business and employment counseling and litigation matters. He was also previously a partner at a boutique litigation law firm where he worked to resolve a wide array of business and employment disputes, commercial and civil litigation matters, and real estate cases. Outside of Mr. Koegle's legal practice, he is a frequent writer and sought-after speaker on a variety of labor and employment-related matters. Mr. Koegle is an active member of the labor and employment sections of the California State Bar and the Los Angeles County Bar Association. He is a philanthropist and just very active in the Santa Clarita community, being voted Santa Clarita's Man of the Year just a couple of years back.
Yeah, back in 22.
Yeah, what an amazing man he is. He's also an alum of one of the many public universities in the great state of Ohio. Brian.
Whoa. Hold on. You want to specify there?
I believe it's this. Well, it's one of the state schools in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's the state school, the Ohio State University.
Oh, I've heard of that school.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty famous.
That's kind of impressive.
I just love that you've called me Mr. Koegle like 10 times here. It makes me smile every time. I think I'm going to make you call me Mr. Koegle the entire interview today, Matt.
All right. Well, in that case, Mr. Koegle, welcome back to Eye on the Valley. Mr. Koegle, every time, it's kind of, I feel like I'm reading in Hebrew, right? When you,
yes.
I'm not Jewish, so I can say it. When you read Yahweh, you need to say Adonai. Same kind of thing. When I read Brian, I'm going to say Mr. Koegle. Mr. Koegle. Yes, I did just compare you to the Lord Most High. I mentioned, well, you're a proud Buckeye, and you and I are both huge college football fans. And,
oh, yeah.
And I like to bust your chops a little bit. As an Ohio State grad, you hold tremendous animosity toward that university.
That team up north, yes.
That team up north. Again, since I'm not one, I can say the word Michigan.
You may.
University of Michigan, who just a couple of weeks ago won the college football national championship, even though their coach was involved in several scandals and served not one but two different suspensions this season alone. It's got to be a tough pill to swallow. But Brian, what's your take on the Michigan championship?
I'm still not okay. I have slept several sleepless nights. There was a lot of tears. There was some alcohol involved.
Okay.
It broke my heart, but congratulations to the Wolverines and their fans. I do believe that this is one of those situations where they had a magical team, a magical year, and while it came at the expense of my Buckeyes, I'm happy that they were finally able to get the monkey off of their back and actually won their first outright national championship since our parents were alive. So I'm not rubbing it in, fans of the Wolverines. I'm not rubbing it in, but this is their first outright in basically 70 years. So with that being said, it's the beautiful thing about college football is it changes year to year, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yep.
You can have the greatest recruiting classes, you could have the best coach, and you have one bad game and it can tear down an entire season.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know me, I'm a UCLA fan.
Absolutely.
And so I was rooting for Washington, well, because they represent the league that UCLA is in, the Pac-12.
Right.
But that's changing.
Yes.
UCLA and USC are leaving the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is just dissolving, and we're heading Well, we're heading
Coming
to
to
the
play
Big
big boy football now.
So what's that experience going to be like? What are Pac-12 fans? What are USC and UCLA fans in for?
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's a very different style of football, especially as you get later into the year, into October and November. Warm weather schools traditionally don't do particularly well playing in snow or sleet or
Sure.
ice or rain, and they're going to have to get used to that. Additionally, obviously, the Big Ten is more of a defensive-minded league, whereas the Pac-12 is open, high flying, great offenses. And so I think we'll see adjustments on both sides, meaning the Big Ten existing teams are going to have to adjust to these high flying offenses. And then the Pac-12 teams who are coming in, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, will have to adjust to playing a little bit tighter defense.
Sure.
But the thing that makes me the happiest is now I get to see my Buckeyes coming out and playing USC and UCLA on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful thing for college football. I'm a traditionalist. I do love having the divisional rivalries, the matchups, the old school Rose Bowl with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten teams that play each other. But I do think that we'll adapt to that. We'll find a new normal for all of us in college football.
There we go. I'm excited about it too. I'm actually getting word from engineer Jen. I think we're actually back on the air now. So we should probably get to work. I promised our listeners that you'd get into specifics about new labor laws. So let's go ahead and do this, shall we?
Absolutely.
So California is kind of a unique state in which to do business. We're one of the world's largest economies, but not always the most business friendly. So what's so unique about doing business here in California?
Well, it's very interesting when you kind of study the history of this, where the idea of the Golden State and doing business in the Golden State through the 70s, 80s, and 90s was kind of like the perfect place for many businesses.
Sure.
We're centrally located. We have access to the East in China and Japan and supply chain that way. And there were so many businesses that came to California during that time period. And we saw this great boom of manufacturing and technology and biomedical. But along with that came a different mindset. The government really looked at protections for consumers, protections for employees a lot more. And over the course of the last 20 years especially, we've seen a whole slew of new laws that do make it more difficult for a small business to do business in California. And there are many hurdles that are put up in way of compliance regulations, reporting to government agencies, and then of course the tax base that is always difficult for businesses to manage. So there are always challenges, but the successful businesses are those that understand that with every impediment, there comes an opportunity, and you have to find where your opportunity lies.
So business owners, employers in California really need to be nimble. And well, you and I were talking before the show started. That COVID thing a couple of years ago is more than just a small speed bump. It changed kind of who we are as a people and how we do things, social things and certainly business things. And so now employers are having to navigate the challenges of things like remote work and flexible work schedules that people don't want to let go of. We learned to do those things in COVID, and now folks want this to be part of their reality. There's other evolving workplace arrangements. So how can employers kind of navigate these new waters we're in?
Well, really, it becomes something that is very personal to the business, and there is no one size fits all. There is no cookie cutter. What is really fascinating to me is pre-COVID, the idea of people working remotely was only in very specific or limited circumstances, right? If someone had an injury and they couldn't get transported back and forth to work, so they were given an accommodation to work from home.
Yeah.
Or, if somebody had a personal situation where they had to be remote for a period of time, it was a case-by-case basis. Then during COVID, we kind of established that most businesses were able to provide at least a hybrid workforce, right?
Sure.
Meaning partial time working from home, partial time working from the office. Now, obviously, this doesn't work in areas like manufacturing or agriculture and landscaping where it's hands-on, physical, tactical work.
Right.
But anything that is technology-driven, we've now shown that it can be done. And what it did was it shifted the mindset of the workers. And the workers said, well, we know it can be done. Why now are you, employer, telling me I have to be back in the office 5 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is that your business is deciding?
Sure.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of business owners are gun shy. And when they can't articulate the why I want you physically present, they cleave and they say, okay, well, that's fine. I'll allow you to work remotely 5 days per week. I do believe I'm old school. I think that there is value in being collective. There's value in being in the same room or being able to walk to the next office and talk to somebody and have that human interaction. I think that there is also a team building aspect that builds loyalty to the business.
Sure.
Because when you don't have loyalty to the business, there's no reason that you don't just go across the street for a different job making 25 cents an hour more. It just becomes a monetary exchange rather than something that is personal. So each business really needs to take a look at what works for their business operations, understanding the personal desires and wishes of their employees, but at the same time looking at the growth strategies, retaining talent, attracting talent, and ensuring that you're going to be able to continue on by keeping your people happy.
Yeah, it definitely. Folks need to know their Simon Sinek. They need to know their why before they
Amen.
start presenting things.
Amen.
So, you talk about some of these discrepancies. One of the things that, I'm a member of our executive team at iLead now, and we're going to be talking. We're going to be playing with Big T a little bit later on this hour. He runs a business up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm close with some of the small business owners in town. There's some things that constantly frustrate me that folks that have owned businesses for a while just kind of chalk it up to it's experience. It's how you do things. And that's the idea of these lawsuits that, where business owners, they know they're in the right. They know they can win a lawsuit, but are oftentimes reticent to take things to court just because it's going to cost more to fight and win
Absolutely.
than it would to capitulate and settle out of court. So is there kind of this line of demarcation? Is there a point where a company decides to fight and send a message and say, no, we're in the right and we're going to stand up and regardless of what it costs? Or is it just does it come down to the bottom line? What other business considerations come into the discussion when you've got this lawsuit that comes up?
Well, and each circumstance is slightly different, but I always have this dialogue with my clients really early on, up front in the initial conversation, which is, where is your pain threshold? At what point is it that you're going to go, uncle, I can't do this anymore?
Sure.
Because what ends up happening is, especially in employment law cases, where the deck is very much stacked against the employer in a way that even the smallest of minor violations can trickle up in stacking penalties into hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. And unfortunately, when the law is as black and white as it is on the compliance end of things, one small violation doesn't give us a righteous position to defend outright, right?
Right.
And the other thing that is really a difficult discussion to have with business owners is, in California, if a plaintiff brings a lawsuit against your business for a wage and hour or labor code violation, and they recover even $1 in damages, meaning you made one small mistake 2 years ago, their entirety of their attorney's fees are recoverable by statute, meaning that settlement that we should be able to strike for $5,000, $10,000, all of a sudden it has a settlement value of $75,000 to $100,000 because the plaintiff's attorneys know this very well, and they use it as leverage against the business, saying, look, we know we have a violation, we see it on paper, we've got it, we've got you need to pay a higher amount, otherwise you're going to be faced with paying $250,000 in attorney's fees. And unfortunately what that does is it puts us at a strategic disadvantage. But there are businesses out there who do have to draw a line in the sand. They have to have that line of demarcation because it may set a dangerous precedent, not just for this employee, but for future employees or for their entire industry as a whole. And in those circumstances, I do have businesses that fight on principle, that fight on, what the future of their business model looks like. And I do think that it is righteous. I do think that it is the thing that needs to be done. And I just need to make sure that the business owner has the stomach and the wherewithal to be able to go through that entire process.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a difficult decision oftentimes that businesses have to make when you're working in the public sector like iLead does. any kind of settlement or lawsuit is taking money away from our students.
Right.
And if it's a private business, any settlement or lawsuit is taking money out of the mouths of your children and your family as the business owner. And I know you represent employers.
Yes.
But let's talk about the employee as well. We mentioned that California kind of tends to favor the employee, but let's face it. Take me, for example. I'm not part of a bargaining unit or a union that would defend me against my employer. I don't have a labor attorney in my back pocket on retainer. And I'm not an expert in the laws of California like my employer is. So if an employee feels that they're being mistreated, what kinds of things should they take into consideration, and where can they go if they feel they need help?
Sure. Well, employees actually have a ton of resources that are available. I will tell you that for the most part, as the internet has grown and data is available and articles are available, many times I find that the employees are better educated than my business owner clients are.
Wow.
And they know the law better than my business owner clients do, which scares me. But for employees who are aggrieved, there are multiple avenues to go. Obviously, there are many, many great plaintiffs' attorneys that are out there that I have much respect for, who bring legitimate, real claims in order to fix or remedy a problem. And many times those folks can be found, all around California. But other options would include that an employee, if it was a wage and hour type scenario where they didn't get paid properly, they can take their claim to the California Labor Commissioner, the DLSE, Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, and the Labor Commissioner will actually pursue the claim on their behalf.
Wow.
So they don't have to go out and retain an attorney. Because again, attorneys are expensive.
Sure.
And while plaintiffs' attorneys take cases on contingency, that means that they're taking 33 cents, 40 cents, sometimes 50 cents on the dollar, whereas the labor commissioner will pursue this, and anything that they're able to recover goes directly into the pocket of the employee. If it's not a wage and hour issue, but it's more of a discrimination or a harassment case, that gets pursued by the California Civil Rights Department.
Okay.
And the Civil Rights Department can come in and investigate, and they can make findings. They can order the parties to mediate the issue. And if they're unable to get to a resolution, many times they throw the power of the Attorney General of the state of California behind the case.
Wow.
To bring a case against the employer.
Yeah.
So those options are available to any employee within the state of California.
Mm-hmm. But great for employees, but it can make it challenging for the business owners, for the employers. So glad they've got folks like you to help them navigate all these different challenges. I'm talking this morning to employment law expert and attorney extraordinaire and red-blooded Buckeye fan, Mr. Brian Koegle, joining me this morning. When we get back, I want to talk about some of those new laws that we've been promising our listeners. So there's a lot of new laws hitting the books that folks need to be aware of. So we'll hit that first, but when we get back, we'll be talking more about that. I am Matt Watson, and you're listening to SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley on your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. This is SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley. I am your host, Matt Watson, and I'm joined this morning by employment law expert and attorney Brian Koegle. That would be Mr. Brian Koegle from the Ohio State University. Mr. Koegle, let's get into some specifics. This is one of the things that I've been promoting. There's a lot of new labor laws for 2024. So what new laws are out there that employers need to be aware of this year?
Well, I mean, we've got a number of things that will affect most employers throughout the state. The big one that everyone has been talking about was Senate Bill 616, which increases mandatory paid sick leave for every employee in the state of California. It used to be that we were permitted to cap their accrual of paid sick leave at 24 hours per year, and that cap has now increased. It's gone from 24 hours to 40 hours per year. That means that a regular full-time employee will accrue their 40 hours by the 200th day of the calendar year as part of the new obligations. What was also interesting is that if you've got a part-time employee who's working more than 20 hours per year, they too will be accruing up to 40 hours per year.
20 hours per year or 20 hours per week?
20 hours per week.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they work 20 hours per week, they would be accruing at a rate of 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked.
Okay.
So therefore, they would be entitled to the full 40-hour sick leave as well.
Okay.
And a couple of other little minor tweaks that came into play with this. For those of you who front load your sick leave, that is still permitted. We are still allowed to do it. You do not need to roll over year to year. But if an employee is accruing their sick leave over the course of the 12-month period, you have to make sure that you allow a rollover to future calendar years to a maximum cap of 80 hours. And that number has increased from 48 the year before.
Okay, and what that basically does, I'm assuming, is, somebody gets sick over the holidays, comes in on January 3rd and says, I can't make it, I'm sick. Well, sorry, you ain't got no sick time, you haven't accrued any.
Precisely.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it protects those type of scenarios. And so an employee can have up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave that has to be provided by the employer. You are still permitted to ask for a doctor's note if an employee is missing an extended period of time from work. And I do encourage you to do that. Make sure you're keeping track of the actual sick leave that people are using. It has to be on their pay stubs, how much they've accrued and how much they've used. And then you should keep an internal log of who's using sick time and when.
Okay, and then does the law still differentiate? Because I know for a while there was a differentiation between sick leave and COVID sick leave. Is there still a differentiator there?
Well, there is no longer mandatory paid COVID leave under the state law. That did sunset at the end of 2022, and so it's no longer in place. So if an employee today were to get ill, they could use their regular sick time. However, if they exhaust their regular sick time, there is no extended sick leave provided for COVID leave any longer.
Okay, so you got COVID, you're sick, you're sick.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good.
That is correct.
And then when we talk about leaves, there was also a change in what they call reproductive loss leave.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so this is for individuals who have suffered either a miscarriage, a stillbirth, that their pregnancy had failed, but it also covers individuals who have a failed adoption or a failed surrogacy scenario. So in those situations, an employee is entitled to take off up to 5 days unpaid by the employer in order to grieve. Basically, it's viewed as bereavement leave. This applies to any employer that has 5 or more employees in the state of California. The employee is allowed to take those 5 days either in one block, or they can take it as intermittent leave, meaning if they wanted to take a day off 1 week and then a day off the following week, they can use it as intermittent leave.
All right.
And the employer must allow the employee to be able to use any accrued sick leave or either PTO or vacation if they have it. So if you provide those two things to your employees and they say, I need to take a leave due to a reproductive loss, you have to allow them to use their sick or vacation leave for that. The really interesting thing about this, though, is the legislature wrote this in such that it's not just a flat 5 days. This is 5 days per loss. So if an individual had a loss, let's just say at the beginning of the year and then towards the middle of the year, they may be able to take up to 20 days, meaning 4 sessions of 5 days each of leave in this situation. And it doesn't just apply in the case of the woman who's carrying the child who loses the child, but this also applies to her spouse or the father of the child as well.
Interesting. So if I'm trying to adopt and I'm going through the process and my adoption falls through up to 4 times in 1 year, I can take 5 days per loss.
That's correct.
Wow.
You're correct.
Interesting. And then it's basically treated as bereavement, as to where previously it was, a stillbirth isn't a death. You don't get bereavement. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting.
And those are job protected leaves. That means that you have to bring the employee back to the same position or a substantially similar position after they return from their leave period.
Okay. Gosh, there's so many different nuances and intricacies, and really does require an attorney oftentimes.
Greatest job security in America, folks.
Fantastic. You talk about job security. This is an issue that came up with a good friend of mine several years back. This idea of non-compete agreements, where when you sever your employment with a previous employer, oftentimes they'll ask you not to go into or go work for a competitor or go into a competing area. There's been some changes this year, because I understand previously these agreements kind of didn't hold water in California. They were sort of empty promises.
That's correct. So dating back to 2008, the California Supreme Court came down with a decision in a case called Edwards versus Arthur Anderson that basically said that non-compete on its face is unenforceable as a matter of law. But the legislature has taken it one step further. In 2023, they passed a bill that says that it's not just unenforceable, having a non-compete is unlawful.
Oh, wow.
And so it can void any agreement that contains a non-compete provision. Additionally, if you as an employer have issued a non-compete provision, either as part of a severance agreement, a settlement agreement, or anything when an employee was parting with you and going, leaving your business, you now have an affirmative obligation under the law to notify that employee that the provision of the non-compete or non-solicit provision is not enforceable and that you will not be seeking to enforce it against them in any way, shape, or form. You have till February 14th of this year to notify those employees. So for those of you who have issued severance agreements in the last couple of years, and if you had any non-compete language in your agreement, you need to make sure that you're sending out those notifications to employees quickly.
So previously, if an employer would include a non-compete clause in a severance agreement, they were it wasn't enforceable, but they were sort of relying on either the pressure of their employee not knowing that or
Yes.
sort of the morals idea of you agreed to this, you should stand by it. Well, now you can be penalized for it. So A, employers just don't do it. And then B, you got until Valentine's Day to let your former employees know that you still love them.
Wasn't it great that the legislature made the deadline on this Valentine's Day?
Right.
I thought it was like, hey, here's a little love note. I'm not going to enforce your non-compete anymore. The one other thing that I find really interesting about this is employers ask me all the time, and they're like, well, how am I going to protect my client list? How am I going to protect my secret sauce? And I say, listen, a trade secret is not the same thing as what we're talking about here.
Okay.
A non-compete just basically says, I'm putting a covenant upon you that you can't go work for one of our competitors.
Sure.
A trade secret and protection of trade secrets, which are called proprietary rights, you absolutely have a right to
still
protect
enforceable.
those.
Okay.
And that should be as part of your severance package that says, our secret sauce, our client lists, any data that you've obtained that is unique to our business practice, you don't get to just walk out with it and go next door to the competitor. That's ours.
Okay.
And you should make sure that you've got strong language in your agreements to ensure that you're protecting those things.
That is good to know. So when I separate ways with my employee, he can go work for my direct competitor, but he can't steal my clients.
That's correct.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. And then it seems like we're dealing with this not only every year now, but almost every 6 months here in California. I'm talking about minimum wage. God, Brian, I remember my first job. I went to work for Zico's. Do you remember
I love Zico's.
Yeah, that was a restaurant that was in town for a half
My
hour.
first job was literally 6 doors down from you at Terry's Chocolate Chippery, right there
I
in
remember
Bouquet
Terry's.
Center.
Yeah. So I was bussing tables at Zico's for $3.15.
Yeah.
I think minimum wage has gone up to like $5-6 now.
Oh yeah. We're definitely in the $5 to $6 range. The state of California has a minimum wage standard of $16 per hour beginning January 1st, 2024. And so for those of you who have businesses within the boundaries of the city of Santa Clarita, the state's minimum wage threshold will apply to you. But for those of you who might be across the 5 freeway or who might have business locations down in the San Fernando Valley, the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County have a significantly higher minimum wage. It's $16.90 per hour. Additionally, what's really fascinating is while California's minimum wage always changes as of January 1, the city of LA and the county of Los Angeles for the unincorporated areas, they change in July. Okay. And so as you said, it feels like the minimum wage is changing every 6 months. It is changing every 6 months. Yeah. And the projections right now are that in July of this year, the minimum wage for the county of Los Angeles will increase once again to somewhere in the range of $17.50 per hour. The goal, by the way, just so that you know, statewide and within the county of Los Angeles especially, is to be kind of on the forefront and be the first to cross the finish line of a $20 an hour minimum wage.
And we're getting there. I see banners all the time,
Yep.
for what we would consider entry-level positions are starting at $20. So employers are kind of leading that charge as well, which is sort of a reversal for us.
Well, and what's really interesting is some of the banners that you're seeing around town are on fast food restaurants,
Yeah.
right? Well, the reason for that is because fast food restaurants actually do have a $20 minimum wage effective April 1 of this year.
Okay.
And so they are required to pay if you've got 60 locations nationwide, it's the same brand. So these are our McDonald's, our buddy Steve over at Jersey Mike's. If you are a franchisee of a national model and you meet all the minimum criteria, you do have to be paying your employees $20 an hour by April.
Wow. Is there a reason why that we decided that fast food is going to be so much higher?
They have a really strong lobby up in Sacramento.
Interesting.
meaning the employee groups
Right.
have a very strong lobby up there.
Right. Interesting. Wow. And is it fast food? Is that the only industry that's affected by a different level of minimum wage?
Well, there is also a minimum wage that's going to go into effect in this year for healthcare workers.
Right.
However, as recently as 48 hours ago, the governor signed a stay order on this. It was set to roll out July 1, and it would increase the minimum wage depending on the role that the person was playing, somewhere between $18 and $23 per hour. However, they're not able to get the regulations drafted in enough time so that the employers have time to adjust, so that
Okay.
they understand what those roles are, whether or not this is a clinical level position, whether this is a janitorial level position, whether this is a support position. And so because we're not going to get the regulations in time, the governor has pushed back that implementation date to January 1 of 2025.
Okay, so if you're working at In-N-Out, you've got a couple more bucks coming your way here real soon.
Yep.
If you're working at Henry Mayo, not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast, my friend.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I want you to look into your crystal ball and see. I know you've got your finger on the pulse, and you're good friends with the zeitgeist.
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
So as you look ahead to the future, do you foresee any other upcoming changes in the areas of focus in employment law that business owners should be preparing for?
Yeah, three major things that I foresee are going to happen this year that every employer needs to know about. First of all, when it comes to your timekeeping for your non-exempt employees, so these are your folks who clock in and out every day. The Supreme Court is deciding a case probably in April of this year. It's the Woolworth case that will basically do away with rounding. It used to be that employers, if somebody clocked in at 6:55 for their 7 a.m. shift, it would roll forward to 7 a.m. And if they clocked in a few minutes late, 7:03, 7:04, it would roll back to 7 a.m., right?
I think it's called the Matt Watson rule.
The Matt Watson rule, yes.
I get there when I get there, Brian.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're always the 7:04 guy. You've
Right,
never
right.
been
Oh,
the
never been
6:55 guy.
No, never.
But in the state of affairs as to where we are right now, that rounding rule will most likely be determined to be unlawful, and that employers will be required to compensate their employees minute to minute. So if somebody
Okay.
clocks in at 6:55, that's when they begin being paid. There is no rounding, there is no balancing. It is just simply you pay the person for every minute that they work, because otherwise, the Supreme Court has determined this in other cases, it would be wage theft, because the employer is arguably receiving the benefit of the labor of an employee for a period where they're not being compensated.
And so in some cases, I could be stealing 0.03 hours of overtime.
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay.
Precisely. The second big thing that I foresee for 2024 is going to be an increase in the minimum wage statewide. Right now, there are going to be a couple of competing bills that are introduced next month, one of which will propose an $18 minimum wage. The other will be proposing a $19 minimum wage. So we'll see which one of those wins. Obviously, for my business owners that I represent out there, I'm advocating very strongly for the lower sum on those two, but it is likely one of those two bills will pass. And then the third issue is going to be kind of this concept of we'll call them specialized industries, landscape, motion picture industry, non-fast food restaurants that are going to be advocating for higher thresholds for their minimum wage, but also for the opportunity to collectively bargain more frequently, meaning coming together in a unionized format.
Sure. I guess, Brian, there's so much that employers kind of have to wrap their heads around, and this is all in addition to how to make a better special sauce, how to run their business,
how to run the business,
how to manage lead and encourage their employees. There's so much. How can business owners kind of stay on top and ensure that not only they're in compliance, but they're looking forward? Do you consult? Where do folks go for help?
Yeah, call me. That's the answer. Listen, my favorite part of my role as counselor at law is to educate. The more education I can get out into the community, into the businesses that I work with, the better off things are. I truly feel that knowledge is power. And if you make a business decision to take a particular risk, saying, hey, I choose not to pay the minimum wage, or I'm not going to give my client or my employees meal periods because I understand the risk, but I don't care about it. Okay. Well, guess what? That's fine. That's your business decision. You're taking that on legitimately. But if you don't know what the risk is, if you can't really balance it in your mind and say, this risk I'm comfortable with, but this risk I'm not, then that's a weak position to be in as a business owner. Mm-hmm. So I get out, I speak. I was just at the Chamber of Commerce yesterday speaking on my employment law update for 2024, and I'll be doing several other presentations over the first quarter of this year, just talking about what we're talking about today, all of the new changes to the law, kind of in greater depth with greater detail. But then the other issue is every business is different. Every business has different needs. I am a resource. Call me. I'm happy to help.
Fantastic, Brian. So valuable, such a valuable resource for our community. Kind of like, when you find that genie in a lamp, you always have to wish for more wishes. I'm going to ask one more question with the hope that more questions will be coming. Brian, you remember my stupid big brother, and well, even though he moved away, Mom still won't let me have nice things of my own, and so she makes me bring him on my radio show at the end of hour number 2. If I recall correctly, the last time you were here, you did stick around for trivia, but Big T sent a substitute. He wasn't even into coming here on his own. He sent little Scott.
Yep.
And
I remember.
Big T is here with us today. Do you have a few extra minutes? Can you stick around and play with us again?
Absolutely. It's on like Donkey Kong.
Fantastic. Brian Koegle, attorney extraordinaire, and I will be back in just a moment for fun with Big T right after this. This is SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley. I am Matt Watson, and this is your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You are listening to KHTS, your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM. This is SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley. I am your host, Matt Watson, and I'm joined this morning by employment attorney Brian Koegle with Greenspoon Martyr LLP. I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. You mentioned that you're available because employers have so many needs and need some support. So you can reach Brian at Greenspoon Martyr LLP. You know what? Just Google Brian Koegle.
Yeah.
Brian like it sounds. Koegle, not so much like it sounds.
Not so much.
Koegle, Brian Koegle, Greenspoon Martyr. But now, enough of you. It is time for Big T's 5 minutes of fame. Y'all know Big T. Big T is an executive and philanthropist. He's an amazing father, husband, and community leader. He's a world traveler, and he is currently being stored in the meat locker that we call the Pacific Northwest. He is Mom's favorite. Everybody, welcome Big T to the show.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Doing great. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Happy New Year. I hesitated on my response to Mr. Koegle earlier because when Big T's done with this call, I've got to go shovel the snow off my driveway.
If it's any consolation, it's slightly overcast here in Santa Clarita today. It is still a very nice 57 degrees, so I can't complain about that.
Nice 57 degrees. That's freezing.
And that's what I was going to bring up. I mean, the three of us used to see each other all the time, and now we live in 3 different states.
Yep, that's
But
true.
we're still blessed.
Dude.
We're still blessed to have great families, fun and challenging jobs, and blessings galore. So I have to ask the two of you, who has it better than us?
Nobody.
Sorry, for those of you who don't know, that is a reference to the championship cheer of that team up north that we do not speak their name of.
Them whose
love you,
names shall not
Brian.
be spoken.
Yes.
That is funny. All right, so Brian, if you remember the rules, Big T's got questions for us. If you know the answer, don't just shout it out. You got to hit your buzzer.
Yes.
Which is your name.
Yes.
Which this morning you're going by Mr. Koegle?
No, we'll just go with BK because it's faster.
BK. All right, there we go. Hey, Have it your way.
Yes.
And I'm going to go by Frogger for some reason or another. We've got engineer Jen here as well. Big T's got questions for us. Hey, why don't you play along in the car or at home, wherever you're listening to us? You've got a significant advantage. You don't have to hit your buzzer. Just shout out your answer and see if you can beat us. But, Jen, Brian, and I, we're pretty smart. I don't know that you're going to do it. Here we go, Big T. What do you got?
Hey, so I got some sports trivia, I got some music trivia, I got some law trivia, lots of fun. So let's kick it off. Which NFL player has scored the most career touchdowns?
Frogger. Emmett Smith.
Incorrect. No hints. He went to that school up north.
BK. Tom
BK?
Brady?
Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I was thinking Brady. Wow.
There
Okay.
you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tom Brady. Who's the all-time leading scorer in the NBA?
BK.
Oh,
BK.
Kareem.
Frogger.
Incorrect. Frogger.
LeBron James.
Oh, jeez.
LeBron James is correct.
Just passed
Yeah,
him.
I know he did just pass it. Doggone it.
Yep.
Who's the only college football player to win 2 Heisman trophies?
BK.
Oh,
Archie Griffin.
BK. And where'd he go to school?
The Ohio State University.
Sorry,
1974,
Ohio State
1975.
still only 1 point.
Speaking of which, and this is a legit question, when was the last time that Ohio State won a football championship?
BK.
BK?
January 2015.
That is correct. They were the 2014 champions that they won in 2015.
That's correct.
When was the last time the Ohio State won a national championship in basketball?
Frogger.
Frogger.
It's got to be the 30s. I'm going to go 37.
BK.
BK.
Can I answer twice? Either 67 or 68.
That is incorrect. It was, Jen, anything?
1955.
Oh, you were the closest. 1960, which I think that's 66 years ago. That's a long time. How many basketball championships has UCLA won since Ohio State won a championship?
Frogger.
Frogger.
Is it 6?
No, incorrect.
BK. 11.
BK. 11 is correct. And Frogger, you're going to get smacked by Papa when you see him next.
Yeah.
What A word signifies a jury verdict that a criminal defendant is not guilty?
Jen.
BK.
Oh,
Jen.
Ooh, acquitted.
Acquittal. That is correct.
Acquittal.
We'll give it to you.
I like it.
Sweet.
Which of the 3 branches of government in the U.S. is made up of courts to uphold
BK.
law in the name of the states? BK?
Judicial.
Judicial is correct. Who starred as Elle Woods in the movie Legally
BK.
Blonde?
I think she beat me.
BK.
I think so too. No, it was Jen. She got him.
That's what I said. I think she beat me.
Was it Jen? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
Reese Witherspoon is correct. Nice
Thanks for the
pull.
softball.
What president signed the No Child Left Behind
Frogger.
Act that reauthorized the Frogger?
George W. Bush.
George W. Bush is correct. In 1935, FDR signed what act into law which established a system of age benefits?
BK.
BK?
Well, it was part of the New Deal, but it was the Social Security Act.
That is correct. Song lyrics. Name this song. Is this the real life? Is this just
BK.
fantasy? BK?
Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Man,
That is correct.
alive.
Bohemian Rhapsody. Song lyric. Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity
Jen.
to see Frogger.
So that is Eminem, Lose Yourself.
Correct. All right, song titles. I'm going to give you some song titles. You tell me the group. Car Thief, Girls, Brass Monkey,
Frogger.
Fight for Your Right. Frogger.
That would be the Beastie Boys.
That is the Beastie Boys.
Hey,
Next
you know me,
question.
one
Name all
lonely
3 of the
Beastie
Beastie
I
Boys.
Oh, Frogger.
Frogger.
So it would be Ad-Rock, Mike D, and Ad-Rock, Mike D, and MCA.
That is correct.
Brian's getting in my kitchen. Rip MCA.
In the Beastie Boys song Shadrach, name the 3 biblical figures. they mentioned.
Frogger.
Was that Frogger first?
Well, I started first. He ended first. I'm gonna make you make the call.
We'll give it to BK.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
That is correct. Name the artist based on these songs. 7, Housequake. Raspberry Beret.
Oh, Frogger.
Let's go. I couldn't hear who? Frogger?
Yeah, that would be me.
It's just some sounds. I don't know if there's actual names spoken.
Prince. All right, we do have to wrap it up. Unfortunately, I was unable to make up that lost ground. BK, Brian Koegle did take it. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we do have to wrap it up. I want to thank our guest, Melissa Rose, facilitator with SCVi, your local TK through 12th grade free public charter school, and her students, Cara and Ray, employment expert and attorney Brian Koegle, producer Sarah, engineer Jen, Big T, and thank you for listening. Remember, life is hard, but we are all here to help each other along. Be well and do good. And join us again next Friday and every week, 8 to 10 a.m. on Friday mornings. I am Matt Watson, and this is SCVi and iLead Schools Eye on the Valley on your hometown station, KHTS.